So I've got to share a really funny article with you about the burning down of this Nottoway plantation. Because people have memes of like Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass smiling. And there's a picture of black people dancing and they're playing checkers and they're having a barbecue while the place burns down. I mean, that's pretty funny. I mean, admittedly, it's funny. But I think the sad thing here is that they're celebrating this plantation burning to the ground, and yet it was slaves who built the plantation. So you're destroying a part of your own history, and people could learn from that history, and they could admire and respect the craftsmanship, the workmanship that went into building this plantation. But this is a really funny article by Bracy Harris. Now, I know this happened a couple of days ago, but I just found out about this, so I thought I'd chime in and talk about it. And if you're new to the channel, no fancy graphics, epic soundtracks, pretty boy camera angles. We talk about the news of the day, maybe a tinge of politics. The main focus here is to preserve great art, music, history, and culture. So that's why I want to cover this. But it is funny to see people, gloat over this, because I can make the same argument about the Palace of Versailles. The people who built Versailles were from the white lower classes in France, and they built Versailles at a time when the people in France were starving in villages. I mean, why do you think they went after Louis XVI? And that palace alone was considered one of the dirtiest palaces in Europe, and that palace alone was responsible for a lot of diseases because they would flush all their waste and would go down the river, what have you. They didn't have the best plumbing back then. So let's get to this article. Title of the article again over at NBC News. A Louisiana plantation turned resort burns, prompting a reckoning. Did I say plantation? Plantation. A fire at the Nottoway plantation has revived a conversation about plantation tourism. When Tamika Thompson first heard about the fire at Louisiana's Nottoway plantation on May 15th, she felt a surge of energy in her body as she recognized why the name was so familiar. She felt a surge of energy. Nottoway. Nottoway. I remember Nottoway. What was the line in Gone with the Wind? There's always terror. We'll always have terror. There's always tomorrow. Her father's family traces its roots to White Castle, where the plantation is based, and she believes some of her ancestors were enslaved there. But can she confirm it? Quote, "It's personal for me," Thompson said. "There's literally a heat I feel. She's in heat now. She's going into heat over this. Girl, get yourself a boyfriend." That's all I gotta say. She wasn't the only one with a strong reaction. As images of the inferno and its aftermath circulated, some took to social media to bemoan the loss while others celebrated its destruction. Which is just plain sick if you ask me. I mean, we lost a piece of history. Whether you agree with Nottoway or why this property was built or not, we lost a piece of history. Take down everything you disagree with, you're not going to have anything to learn or write about or to, talk about. The plantation, roughly 25 miles from Baton Rouge, was built as the largest antebellum home still standing in the American South. Funny they mentioned Baton Rouge, because I've mentioned this before. In 1810, you had these settlers at what was known as the Republic of West Florida that wanted the United States to recognize them as a colony. The United States refused. They didn't want to get into a war with Spain because Spain controlled the area at the time. And so they took over the barracks at Baton Rouge, raised the bonnie blue flag, declared their independence from Spanish rule, and the bonnie blue flag is the first star of the root of the Confederate battle flag. How many people gloating about Nottoway burning to the ground know that? Probably nobody. And like so many other symbols of its era, it has become a Rorschach test, is that how you say it, for how residents grapple with the region's history. The fire there has revived a conversation about how properties born from slavery should be viewed and how they should function today. Well, we don't have plantations today. We have plantation-style homes, or homes that were at one time a plantation that have been revived or maybe maintained, which in many cases have been turned into a resort, not for any racial reason, but because it's a part of history. People love, 19th century Victorian life. They love, that era. So if they get a chance to go to someplace that gives them that experience, that's what they're going to do. Have a wedding, some type of function, you name it, just to go do something and have fun. That's what people would do. Now, I'm not downplaying slavery here. And anybody who's been to these plantations or has planned an event at these plantations or plantation-style homes knows, unless you've lived under a rock, that at one time they may have used slave labor just as they probably used white indentured labor, or, get this, convicted felons. Because a lot of people back in the day were sentenced to manual labor as part of their sentence, which is at the tail end of the 13th Amendment. Slave labor will be abolished, except in the case of, the case of criminal punishment. Now, it's true a lot of people took advantage of that, but that's at the end of the 13th Amendment, which everybody tends to miss. Nottoway, a former sugar plantation, has been criticized for whitewashing the past. It is promoted as a 40-room, quote-unquote, resort with an outdoor pool and ideal for weddings. Well, as I just said, they turn these properties into, resorts or what have you, to keep them going. So the way they're making the sound here is that all these 40 rooms are in the house. See, they're not telling you that it's a much bigger complex. It's not just the Nottoway plantation house that you've probably seen. It's a huge complex. It's got former slave quarters. And by the way, back in the day, a lot of poor white people's homes were about the size of slave quarters. Because people were poor. They were poor in the South. I know. My grandfather, okay, his family came here dirt poor. They settled in Kentucky. Irish. When we talk about white supremacy or, white privilege. A history page on its website describes the names and sizes of century-old oak trees on the property named after the children of John Hampton Randolph, for whom the plantation was built, but fails to mention the history of the roughly 155 people who were enslaved there. Bull. Because people who have worked there said, yes, we have talked about this. It's just not in your face. It doesn't need to be. Doesn't need to be what? Is it the Whitney or Whitney plantation? Whatever you call it. Whitey plantation? There you go. The Whitey plantation. Here at the Whitey plantation, well, these are places where people bled, people sweated to build something that they could never actually have a piece of, said Eugene Lee Johnson, a political science assistant professor at Southern University, who attended a senior prime at Nottoway in 2009 when the property was under different ownership. Well, wait a minute. So you hate these plantations. You despise the fact that these people built these plantations with slave labor, but you attended an event at Nottoway. Isn't that being a little hypocritical? Wouldn't you have said, sorry, I don't believe in that, I'm not going to go? The hypocrisy of these people is unbelievable. Plantations are basically graveyards as well, he continued. Nottoway's current owner, William Dan Dice, last name D-Y-E-S-S, an attorney who only recently purchased the property, declined to comment for this article, because secretly he's a racist. I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek. He told the New York Post that the fire appeared to be electrical, which tends to be an issue with a lot of these older homes. Though he acknowledged the plantation's complicated history, he distanced himself from its legacy. We need to move forward on a positive note, and we are not going to dwell on past racial injustices. So how is he distancing himself from the history of this plantation? He said, we are not going to dwell on past racial injustices, which means that was then, this is now. We're going to turn something negative into a positive. And as I said, this is a huge complex. And a lot of these rooms that you were able to rent at the time were actually in these different parts of the complex. The house pretty much was like a museum, and there was, I think, a restaurant downstairs or in the basement area underneath the house. Some plantations take a fundamentally different approach. For Ashley Rogers, executive director of the Whitney Plantation, the Whitey Plantation, the Whitney Plantation, a nonprofit museum in Wallace, Louisiana, confronting past injustice is a core part of her job. The memorial at the Whitney Museum recognizes the hundreds of people who were once enslaved there by name. Its tour guides, describe the punishments slaves faced for trying to escape, for instance, or reading. With very few exceptions, it doesn't allow weddings on its grounds. Rogers said she wasn't familiar with Nottoway's operations, but said it was important to offer plantation visitors a clear view of slavery. If you were telling a story on a plantation that does not center the black experience, she said, you're not telling the truth of the plantation. Again, most people who go to a plantation, unless you've been living under a rock, realize and know that a plantation probably used slave labor as it did white indentured labor, and probably in the building process of it. Probably had some white indentured servants, possibly Chinese indentured servants, working out in the field. That was common. It's a well-known fact. You can go back and you can research this. So nobody's hiding the truth here. It's a plantation. You realize that there may have been slaves there. That was then, this is now. But again, if you tear down anything you disagree with, you're not going to have anything left to write or talk about or discuss. So I thought I'd share this with you, people gloating over the end of Nottoway, burned to the ground. I believe it was last week. But it is a part of American history. Whether you agree with what happened then or not, it is a part of American history. So, should we burn down Versailles? Given the French Revolution? Just something to think about. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, another one-take type. I love doing this one-take types because some, YouTubers are afraid of making mistakes. Not me. I'll just leave it in the video. Adds flavor to the video. So at any rate, hope you enjoyed the video. Follow me at Instagram, #JasonComposes, because I write music in my spare time. Go to X, Culture Confederacy, at Culture Confed1 on X. Now you can find me at Substack. So this is the Culture Confederacy saying peace out, stay safe, everybody. I'll catch you next time, and y'all have a great Memorial Day weekend. Take care.